Hey, Nick with Fat Make Build Cook. Today's video we're going to go over how I built this 82-gallon offset smoker. Traditional flow, straight stick burner. Let's get into it. Here I'm using some 2" by 2" square tubing, and I have a little bit of a cardboard template here that I'm utilizing to help me with the radius of the cook chamber. You'll see that come into play here in a little bit. But yeah, I'm just using the cutoff wheel and the angle grinder to get this thing all shaped and formed, and then I'm going to start laying out the frame on the welding table. Nice little fit up. Grinding down all the welds and stuff is pretty good practice, just so it looks better, and then you have nice flat surfaces to attach other components to. So I always like to grind down my welds. Now normally I'm all about bolting on casters and stuff like that, but really the frames of the casters themselves aren't what go bad. It's the bearings and stuff. So I'm pretty comfortable just welding these right directly to the frame of the smoker. And there I was just tacking the rolled steel plate so that the main cook chamber has some integrity, so I can go ahead and lift it up with the crane and get it on top of the frame. Now that it's on the frame, I'm going to go ahead and weld that whole seam and get this thing all nice and buttoned up. And here I'm just tacking the legs onto the main cook chamber, and then I'll get those all welded out once everything's nice and square and plumb. And here I'm going to be laying out and cutting out the main cook chamber door supports. They're kind of like metal ribs that will keep the door from either flexing in or out, so that you get that kind of pour seal and stuff. Because I don't know if you guys have ever done this, but as soon as you cut open those doors, they definitely want to tweak and flex and kind of go wherever they naturally want to go. And this is just a good way to kind of keep that door from springing on you. You've probably noticed that the video has been kind of hazy, and I figured that out right here, and you'll see it was just a setting on the camera. It was completely operator error. What the fuck? Now I'm cutting out the smokestack end of the main cook chamber. Just put it onto a 4" chunk of pipe that I had laying around and used some magnets to hold it up tight. Worked pretty well. Then we're moving on to laying out the collector kind of area that I'm going to have to cut out here. It goes pretty quick, and some simple math and geometry works well for this step. So you could totally do all this with a 4.5" grinder and a cutoff wheel, but man, does it make a world of difference with a plasma cutter. I just think it's such a good tool for these particular types of jobs, and it's just it's fun to work with. Highly recommend. Now it's time to tack in those main cook chamber door braces. You'll see I'm just putting in some tacks initially, but I'll get those pretty well welded in down the road. And then I was ready to weld on the collector end plate of the main cook chamber. And this goes on pretty straightforward, nothing too crazy with that. Just weld it in. Now I'm going to start making the actual firebox. This is going to be a dual wall, 3/16" thick firebox, where it'll be insulated on the top bottom and the front and back, not the door side or the cook chamber side, as you'll see later. But it worked out pretty good. This thing's a beast. Here's a couple of the external plates, or the outside of the firebox, and you'll see I stuffed the insulation in after the fact. Goes in real good, and this just made it a lot easier to kind of do all the welding while I was up on the table. I tell you what, this thing's getting pretty darn heavy. You can see me sliding it around on the table, but without the crane, this would have been, well, you'll see here in a little bit, it was a little sketchy regardless, but it'd be super sketchy without a crane. I don't know how the heck I'd get that thing off the table onto the ground.
Oh, there she blows. Do have those supports in the bottom there, just because that's where most of the heat's going to congregate here. But
and now I'm cutting out the door for the firebox, and this is the faceplate of the firebox as well. And you'll see we'll real quick insulate that and then weld on the faceplate. And this is just another example of where that plasma cutter comes in handy, doing nice circular cuts like that. It's really hard with the cutoff wheel.
oh yeah.
And then just stuffing in the insulation. Actually, it doesn't get really stuffed, it just gets loosely put in there, but it is all the way around. And then we go ahead and get that cover plate welded on there for the door frame.
Don't let magnets fool you. That one magnet, granted it is rated to 600 kilograms, 1,200 pounds, which is, I would say, this thing might be 400 pounds. Maybe not even that, but still, she's floating. I find that absolutely crazy.
I was worried about that. Holy fuck. Whew. Well, good thing it's built like a brick shithouse. It just goes to show you that you really got to be careful when you're messing around with some heavy stuff. You want to make sure that you keep your feet and legs and anything that could be, potentially damaged out from underneath heavy objects while lifting. So do this at your own risk. Here I'm cutting out and welding in the end of the cook chamber that's just above the firebox. And now it's time to start cutting out the main cook chamber door. I freehand some of this cutting because sometimes it's just easier to freehand, but other times I do like to use a straight edge, and a chunk of cardboard works pretty good for this. After pulling the door off, I do clean off all the dross and use a flap wheel and stuff like that before I put on the flanges of the door, as you see here. The flanges are made with 1.5 inch by 1/8 inch cold rolled mild steel, so it's fairly easy to bend, welds nice, and it looks pretty clean. Now I'm jumping around a little bit here. I haven't installed the main cook chamber door because I wanted to get some interior work done first. And one of the first things I wanted to make was a removable baffle plate, kind of a direct heat diverter, just so you're not sitting there scorching any piece of meat that you put on the cooking grate directly next to the Firebox. And this is removable, hence the reason I am drilling and tapping holes and basically making it a bolt-on apparatus. And it's simple enough to just put the plate on there and tack it in and then bend it down into place and then finish up the weld after that so you can kind of get the appropriate angle you want and everything else. So that's a hot tip for speed at least. And now it's time to install the main cook chamber door. I'm using those 4.5 inch weld on bullet hinges that are carbon steel. I like them a lot. They're clean, they're easy, they're relatively inexpensive, and I've had good luck with them. Alright, with the door installed, now I need a way to open it up, so I'm going to start making a handle here. And first part of that is handle brackets. So I'm welding together these two long flat bar pieces. I believe they're 6 inch by 3/16 inch thick mild steel if I remember right. But that way I could draw out a bracket design and plasma cut these things out, drill the holes so that the handle rod will fit in there, and kind of make these things identically at the same time, and it seems to work pretty well. And now it's time to install that handle. So I'm just gonna put it up, tack it up, make sure everything's level, make sure it fits and rolls right, and get it all welded in place. Then for a door stop, I'm doing a pretty simple bar just above the door. That way when you open the door, it can rest back on that bar. Nice and easy. Looks pretty good, and it's extremely simple to do. Moving on to the collector for the smokestack. This is another one that if you just draw it out, it's really not that hard. The pipe that I use here for the smokestack is 6 inches, so I want at least 6 inches gap between the pipe and the end of the cook chamber. So for a total protrusion or extension of about 12 inches. So with that, you can draw up your collector layout fairly quick and easy. There's a couple of ways to go about this. You can make the collector as an entire unit off of the smoker and then just attach the entire collector unit. Here I kind of added it piece by piece just to kind of line everything up. I don't know if this is necessarily better or worse. It's just the way I did it. So use it if you want to. Otherwise, yeah, building it as a standalone piece and then attaching it might be a little bit less, have a less likelihood of errors or off measurements.
I lost battery, so while I was waiting for that thing to charge back up, I got the collector all welded in. Turned out pretty good. I'm happy with it. And now I'm going to get the damper installed.
For the damper rod, I just used some 3/8 inch round bar mild steel with a couple of pieces of DOM tubing to act as kind of the bearings or shaft guides. And then just tack them on in, weld everything together, and it works well. Now we're just drilling some holes for the temperature gauges. These are the bottom cooking grate racks that I'm getting installed here. And these are just some simple 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch 1/8 inch angle iron. Now we're cutting out a hole and welding on a 1.5 inch pipe nipple for the 1.5 inch ball valve. That's the grease drain on this unit. Then it's simple enough to just thread the valve right onto the nipple and move on. And here I'm cutting out the expanded metal for the log rack on the bottom, and I will say I love installing this expanded metal. It just really kind of adds a finished look to the cooker, and it's just really satisfying getting it all welded in place.
And here I'm starting on the frames of the bottom cooking grates and getting the expanded metal all attached to those. I like doing 2 separate grates for the bottom. That way you can take up way more of the cook chamber space as opposed to like the top rack, which is one single shelf. And that one you can see is just the width of the door. And this is the handle for the cooker, so that way it can be dragged around with ease. And I did a 1.5 inch DOM tubing because it was a drop piece at the metal market where I get my metal. And I think it was nice and robust. Simple enough to just weld it right onto the pipe of the smokestack and then cut out some ends and cap the ends. That way it just looks nicer and has a way more finished look to it. And I gotta say, I'm really happy about this handle design. Even after hours of cooking, it stayed relatively warm, not hot. And this here is going to be a fire management basket. I've never built one. I actually had a guy pick up a different direct heat cooker once, and he swore by it, said that they were just amazing and they were good. So I figured, hey, what the heck, I'll give it a whirl. And I gotta say, yeah, he was not wrong. These are really nice. You establish a coal bed quite nice. You don't have to worry about the ash smothering them, when you're using a flat bottom cooker. But, with a traditional round cook or fire chamber, that's probably not an issue, but with a flat bottom it definitely is, and this mitigates that quite nicely. That was awesome. I learned real quick that pulling out the fire management cradle, dumping your chimney of charcoal into that thing once they're all lit up, and then just lifting the basket back into the firebox is absolutely the way to go. With gloves, of course. Fire's been rolling for about 30 minutes now. I don't know if the camera's doing that any justice. Just a test fire, just to get it seasoned up. It's burning nice and clean. Looks like we're right about 260 on the right and about 255 on the left. It's nothing too crazy. Burning decently clean. Yeah, I don't know, about an hour or so. A couple more layers of oil. Throw some food on here. All finished up. Had it first burn on it tonight. It's actually still warm. Nice little handlebars. Boom, boom, boom. Yep, so the firebox is 24 inch by 24 inch on the outside as far as a cube. And it has 2 inches of insulation around the top, the front, the back, and the bottom. The door side I didn't insulate. I don't know how necessary that would be or how much benefit you'd actually get from it. And then underneath the cook chamber here, you can see the weld line there. So that's a single sheet of 3/16 inch thick steel. So I didn't insulate that part either, the front end of this. And I don't know, maybe that adds a lot, removes a lot. We'll see what the performance does of this thing, but so far it holds temps awesomely and burns really, really nice fire. That fire management cradle is nice. Super clean. I'm liking it. All right, here's some video for a barbecue competition me and my buddies did. I'm on an amateur barbecue competition team. Jay and Willie's Barbecue, that's rock, in front of the offset. The thing did great. This is Will here on the barbecue pit finishing up some baby backs, and it looks like some chicken wings maybe. He's telling me quit recording and get back to cooking.
Alright, again, really had fun making this one. It was super cool build, went a lot smoother than the last one. Learned a lot as always, and I'm looking forward to the next one already. Again, really appreciate you guys watching, liking and subscribing. Share it please if you could, and we'll see you guys in the next video. It's Nick with Fab Make Build Cook.